mention
Okay.
about rights. So we are all entitled to these rights by virtue of being human beings. And it's not good to categorize human rights. I think I should mention that. Because
Okay.
rights are indivisible, they are interrelated. You cannot say that I'm going to enjoy civil and political rights and you don't enjoy economic, social, cultural rights. So that's why they are indivisible and interrelated.
Okay.
And they're inalienable. They are God-given or inherent.
Okay. When you try to look at Uganda's human rights today, currently, how are people, are we, okay, out of the human rights that we have or that we are entitled to, like you say, they're not tangible, but they have to come in natural. Is it a flow of all come out of respect?
We are supposed to realize them, to enjoy them,
okay.
by being human beings. Yeah.
But do you believe Ugandans are enjoying those human rights currently?
To some extent, yes, because when you look at our report, the 24th annual report, maybe that's the reason why we are here today,
yes,
to discuss the 24th annual report. We realize that there are some areas where people are enjoying their rights, but also there are areas where people are not enjoying their rights. Like, for example, maybe if we can now delve into the 24th annual report, what the Commission did, and we monitored the human rights situation and reported. We presented a report to the Speaker of Parliament, excuse me. We presented a report to the Speaker of Parliament on 13th of June 2022. And this report highlights various thematic areas that the Commission monitored in 2021, but also UHRS's interventions when it comes to the promotion and protection of human rights, because it's our mandate as Uganda Human Rights Commission to promote and protect human rights in the country. So we monitored, for example, when you look at the annual report of 24th annual report, we looked at 12 chapters in that report, and we looked at the various human rights concerns in those specific thematic areas and made recommendations to government. For example, chapter 1 of the report, we looked at COVID-19 and its human rights implications in the country. We all know what Uganda went through. Uganda dealt with the second wave in 2021.
But sorry to cut you short. It is the 24th annual report.
Yes.
So this was
the state of human rights in 2021. And
this one was for last year, right?
Yes.
So if you have to break down something, you've mentioned something about COVID-19. Now, how does COVID-19 relate to the issues to do with human rights there?
Because COVID-19 had various human rights concerns. Like when you look at what happened during COVID-19, there was the schools were locked, they were closed, there was lockdown, and you know the resultant of locking down the country, economic activities weren't going on as usual, as children were not going to school, that is the right to education. People could not have access to health. You remember the issue of the high cost of medical care, that is right to health. So you're wondering how human rights and COVID-19 come in. So COVID-19 came, but we saw the human rights concerns during COVID-19. Also, when you look at the issue of excessive use of force by security agencies during COVID-19, as we're trying to implement the curfew, to implement the restrictions of spreading COVID-19, somehow there was excessive use by police, and that is some people were arrested. Others were deprived of their personal liberty, others were tortured during the process. But mostly, when you look at the issues of human rights concerns during COVID-19, like for example, the issue of teenage pregnancy, because that's also a concern, that's a human rights concern, because many girls became pregnant. It was COVID-19, it was a health issue, but also at the same time there were resultant human rights issues that came as a result of COVID-19. And also we saw issues of domestic violence during COVID-19. Many women were battered in their homes. There was a lot of domestic violence during COVID-19. So that's why I think you're wondering how COVID-19 is related to human rights. But in a way, we had COVID-19, it was so bad. Many people died. That is also right to health. Many people couldn't afford the issue of affordability. The quality of services in Uganda, we also saw that many people could not even afford health services because of the exorbitant fees that were being charged by the different private health facilities and health hospitals.
Now let's break down these chapters of the 24th annual report from the Human Rights Commission. And if you just joined again, we are here with the Uganda Human Rights Commission. They had a 24th annual report that was released for the year of 2021. And currently now, I'm having a senior human rights officer from the Uganda Human Rights Commission, Priscilla Nyarugoye, who is joining in on set now. She's going to break down for us a few of these chapters in this particular report.
Thank you so much. I've already talked about the first chapter,
yes, which is
COVID-19. Then we also looked at externalization of labor.
Okay.
I think we are all aware that there's a lot of labor that is exported to the Middle East. People go to Saudi Arabia, people go to Oman, people go to different Middle East countries, and there are various human rights concerns when it comes to this exportation of labor. We know that there are both pull and push factors why people go to these places. One of the pull factors is because of the opportunities the other side. So people always want to go to those Middle East countries. But there are also push factors, or the issues that push people to come from Uganda and go and export their labor to those Middle East countries. For example, the issue of poverty. Like, you find people are so poor that they can't keep in Uganda, they want to go and be abroad or be in the Middle East. Then the issue of bandwagon effect, like someone thinks that since everyone is going, I also need to go and do some work in the Middle East. Then also the issue of not having skills and education. Some people don't have enough skills. Like, for example, you can imagine someone having a master's degree in Uganda and you're earning 2.2. So you can imagine someone who has a certificate, what would happen? So they would want to go out and make money in those other countries. So we have both pull and push factors that cause people to leave Uganda and go abroad. But unfortunately, they go not knowing that there are challenges that they will face when they go the other side. We've had many girls being sexually abused. We've seen many girls go abroad or to those Middle East countries, and they go, and yet there are cultural differences, there are religious differences, and they are not even aware of the laws that govern in those specific places. They are not properly trained for them to know the culture and the religious differences that are there to those countries that they go to. So a lot of them have been exploited. Some of them have come back to Uganda when they have mental illness. I have someone that I know that went to Oman, and by the time she came back to Uganda, she could not actually understand. She had a mental illness.
I also wanted to at least ask something about that. How have you, as the Uganda Human Rights Commission, been following up on most of these Ugandans who send in their grievances and sending in their complaints that their rights are being violated in the other countries, regardless of the fact that they're in different homes? But I do believe it is also government is concerned when they leave this country. So when you look at the report of 2021 in a breakdown of externalization of labor, how many cases have you received so far?
As UHRC, some of these cases are kind of criminal in nature. We do not have a mandate we don't have a jurisdiction. For example, some of them are trafficked, and if it's a trafficking case, UHRC does not have a mandate to handle such cases. So our role is to monitor and report. We realized 98% we are doing casual work. Some of them are drivers, they are cleaners, they are really doing I don't know how to explain it, but it's more of casual work. 98% of the people that leave Uganda to those Middle East countries are into casual work. Then around 0.2 we are doing professional jobs. You can imagine 0.2 are doing professional jobs. So that means even the pay that they get, even if they are being attracted to go, but still even when it comes to remuneration for the work done, it's still little money. Then when you look at 1.2, we are doing some professional jobs. So it's really not. Yes, there are factors that are pulling them to go and push factors, but I think it will be better for someone to keep in Uganda than going, in my opinion.
Everyone has different reasons as why they leave the country.
That's very true. That's why I said that they are both pull and push factors.
Now moving on to chapter 3. I would want to have these ones. You said you have 12 chapters?
Yes.
Now we've so far broken down chapter 1, COVID-19.
Chapter 2, Externalization of Labor.
We move on to chapter 3.
But one thing I wanted to mention on chapter 2 is we've been recommending government to have labor attaches. So that those labor attaches can work in those specific countries. They work with the foreign missions and see how they can help these girls. Actually, it's not only girls, but even when I talk about girls, someone might think we are talking about people that are below 18 years.
Definitely.
No, I'm not meaning that. But I believe there also could be some people that go when they are still 18 years and below, because we have an issue of age determination in the country, and also the issue of people raising their ages yet they are young.
It's an African challenge.
Yes, I can say I am I can say I am 22, yet I'm 18, yet I'm 17 because I want to go and work.
Yes.
Yes. So the other chapter was on we looked at the human rights situation in Buvuma and Kalangala districts. Buvuma and Kalangala, they had to reach... That is
a case study of where these cases are coming from?
No.
Okay.
This is chapter 3.
Oh, right.
We've now crossed to chapter 3. We've finalized chapter 1 and chapter 2 of the report.
All right.
Now we also looked at the human rights situation in Buvuma and Kalangala and realized that the commission noted that there are various islands on in those specific districts. Like, for example, Kalangala alone has 84 islands, and these 84 islands, 65 of them are inhabited, or people are settled in those specific islands. Then Buvuma has 52 islands. So you can imagine having 52 islands. So that means when it comes to access to social services, government may not be able to reach in all those islands where these people are. You understand? Like you find a school is on one island, someone has to cross from the other island to where the school is. So children are really struggling to access education. Also when it comes to right to health, people are struggling to access right to health because they have to move from one. You can imagine if you're an expectant mother and you have to move to another island to be able to get health services. It's really quite a challenge. And we found it a really great challenge. Then when it comes to water and sanitation, still even the water is not safe and clean for the people. And also when it comes to construction of pit latrines, it's a challenge in these islands because the soil is sandy, so it's hard to construct a toilet because the area is, I think, soft, it's sandy. So you can imagine what happens. People it's so unfortunate they have to use, some of them who are told that they use Buvera. They use polythene bags to do whatever they have to do. So it's really a great challenge in that specific area of the country, and I think government needs to do something about it. Also, when you look at access to electricity, they actually use solar because it's also very hard to take power lines to those specific. You can imagine 52 islands, people settling in those specific islands. So having services being brought closer to the people, it's really a great challenge. So there are issues of right to health, issues of access to justice, also accessing justice. If you had an issue, maybe your husband has beaten you in the home. So you can imagine moving from one island to another. It's really a great challenge. Then another thing that we established during our monitoring visits was the issue of you remember most of the people in that specific part of the country, in those islands, they are into fishing.
Exactly.
They do a lot of fishing, and it's mostly men that do fishing.
And even the access to medical facilities becomes a very huge challenge.
That's very true. So you find there are few women, so there were allegations of, how can I call it?
Rape?
I think also the cases of sexual abuse, and also sharing of women, and that has led to high rates of prevalence of HIV/AIDS in that specific part of the country. And also you've heard about the UPDF, allegations of UPDF operations in those islands.
Because of the poor fishing methods and all that, yes.
So you can imagine the resultant human rights concerns that come as a result of that, because UPDF will try to enforce what they need to enforce, but in the process, they end up allegedly violating people's rights, like arbitrarily arresting them and detaining them, torturing the people, etc., etc. I think in summary, that's what I can say about Buvuma. Then the fourth chapter was on extractive industries. We monitored the human rights situation in Karamoja. You've heard about artisanal mining in Karamoja. I hope people know about artisanal mining, where we all know that Karamoja...
You know, when you mentioned Karamoja, I almost thought you were going to mention something about the cattle rustling that was happening a few months back.
Yes, there was rustling and also disarmament. We also looked at disarmament. We looked at disarmament under emerging issues. But this was on extractive industries. Karamoja has so many minerals, over 50 minerals. They have marble, they have limestone, they have silver, they have gold. There are a number of minerals. I might not remember all of them. I might not even actually recall all of them, but there are around over 50 minerals in Karamoja. But unfortunately, people are using the local, how can I call it, rudimentary ways of getting these. Like someone has to, if you're to get marble and limestone, you have to use rudimentary tools of breaking stones. I don't know how to explain it. And there are various human rights concerns in those specific areas. Like you find even that children are involved, and that is child labor. People are working without protective gear because they have to break marble, they have to break limestone, they have to like struggle for their lives. And you find, like for example, I'll give an example of limestone in Karamoja. Like they have to use, how they call them, like hammers to break the stones.
Yes.
And you can imagine filling a big truck. It's like 150,000 shillings. And that, you can imagine one person can't do it alone. So you have to work with the entire family. So you find children are not going to school because they have to work and get money. Then another issue was in regard to protective gear. I've mentioned that. Child labor, I've mentioned that. Then also issues of sexual gender-based violence. They are also in those mining areas. So there are a number of human rights concerns in Karamoja when it comes to extractive industries. People are exploited for their labor, and yet they do a lot of work.
Chapter 4.
This is chapter
5. Chapter 4. Okay, if you're just joining in, we're breaking down the 12 chapters of the 24th annual report from the Uganda Human Rights Commission. And I am with Priscilla Nyarogoye, who is the Senior Human Rights Officer at the Uganda Human Rights Commission. So clearly, she first gave us a preamble of the human rights in Uganda and why you would need them, by the way, because we are all human beings and we would need them. Now we are heading to chapter 5 of the report.
Chapter 5 of the report was on on enforced disappearances.
Okay.
There were alleged cases of enforced disappearances in 2021. There were many. The media was awash with cases of missing persons in the country, and as Commission, we were so much concerned about it. So we monitored and reported about it also. One thing that we need to remember is that the government of Uganda has not ratified the UN Convention, that is the United Nations Convention on Prevention of all persons from enforced disappearances. So there were allegations of people that were missing in the country. So as the Commission, maybe one thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show was the Commission also receives and investigates cases of human rights violations. So when there were these cases of missing persons, as UHRC, we received around 69 complaints of missing persons. But out of these 69 complaints, 64 were found. By the time of reporting, the time we wrote the report, I think around 65 were found. We got to know where they were, and 4 were, I think, if there were 64, I think 5 were the ones that were still missing by the time of reporting. And we all know that there were allegedly so many human rights violations that came as a result out of persons that were missing in the country, and there are human rights implications of having such concerns in the country. Like for example, the right to fair and speedy hearing is also an issue that came out as a result of allegedly enforced disappearances in the country, and also issues of cases of torture. There were also allegations of torture. Some people alleged that they were tortured during that period of being allegedly held incommunicado. I want to call it allegedly or alleged enforced disappearances, and also cases of these persons not having access to their persons, like having access to their relatives or access to the outside world. Because if someone is deprived of their personal liberty, yes, the right to move freely is taken away, but you have others to enjoy as a person. Like you're supposed to be visited, you're supposed to have access to food, access to medical care, you have to have access to your next of kin, access to your lawyer, and all that. So there were allegations of torture, allegations of them not having access to their relatives, etc., etc. And we made a recommendation of the government of Uganda ratifying that convention, because it's very key for the government of Uganda to ratify the convention on the prevention of persons from enforced disappearances. And also we need a law on witness protection as Uganda, and a law on legal aid. Because if you have a law on legal aid, then people will be there will be enhancement of access to justice. People will easily have access to justice. Okay,
and now let's switch to chapter 6.
Chapter 6 was on plight of urban refugees. We all know that the government of Uganda has been hosting a number of refugees in different settlements in the country. There are many refugee settlements like Changwali, like others are in Arua, like I'm forgetting the others. But there are a number of refugee settlements in the country. But we all know that some of these refugees, when they come to Uganda, not all of them are comfortable staying in those refugee settlements. There are those that love to keep in urban centers. So we interested ourselves in this because we realized that there were a number of human rights concerns that urban refugees face. These are refugees that come to Uganda and they don't want to stay in refugee settlements. They want to be in urban centers, like they want to be in Kampala. We've seen some like the Somalis in Kisenyi. There are a number of them that come to Uganda and they don't want to be in those specific refugee settlements. And when you look at the concerns that the refugee policy recognizes them, there's a refugee policy, it recognizes them, but so long as you can fend for yourself, then you can be in the urban centers. Okay. But remember, if you're in the urban center, that means you have to make sure you work, you have to make sure you look for jobs, which is a challenge. Most of them don't have papers. I mean, those that have papers, maybe they have issues of language barrier. There are concerns of access to justice for them. Like when you go to courts of law, maybe some of them do not even understand the language. They don't maybe understand even English. So they have concerns of even right to housing, where they stay, the places are not really good places. They don't have right to food, they're not enjoying their right to food. So there are a number of human rights concerns that urban refugees face in the country, those that do not want to stay in refugee settlements. And for example, in 2020, Kampala alone had 80,391 urban refugees.
Okay.
Can you imagine that big number? So huge. We really have a lot of urban refugees. So
these also include the street children that we see?
No. Okay. Remember, refugees are people
who come in from various countries? From various countries
because maybe of war, wherever they're coming from, so they come for refuge in the country of Uganda.
Yes.
And most of them don't actually even have IDs. That's one thing that we established. Like they don't have identity, something to identify them as urban refugees. So the people that you see on street, some of them are street children, maybe from Karamoja, but other urban refugees, they are those that they come from different countries and they come to Uganda for refuge, but they don't want to stay in refugee settlements. They prefer staying in urban centers. There are some refugees who can't stay, like for example, I think Somalis, they can't stay in refugee settlements. Some of them prefer being in
the urban areas?
In the urban areas.
Okay.
So they can look for jobs, so they can do business, etc.
Okay, and we're still moving on with more of the Annie report now. She's trying to break it down for us in the next 5 minutes to have the last 5 chapters.
Okay. The other chapter was on access on juvenile justice.
Okay.
We also monitored juvenile justice in the country, trying to see the issues that should, juvenile justice, when you talk about juvenile justice, juveniles.
At the young age, 17, okay.
The criminal, if you're a child, any child who's 12 years and above,
12 years, 17, 15, when you're
12, 13,
engaging
14, 15,
in criminal related, okay.
Then you're a juvenile. So that means you're criminally liable if you're 12 years and above.
Okay.
If you're a child and you commit any offense, if you're 12 years and above, then you're criminally liable.
Okay.
And we realized that there are a number of cases that children find themselves in, and they end up being in conflict with the law. Most of them are suspected to have committed murder. Some do rapes, child sex. They do theft, like a number of cases. And when they are arrested, sometimes because police does not have police cells for them, so you find they end up being detained with adults. And you can imagine if a child is 12 years of age and they detain him or her with a criminal, with someone who's suspected to have committed maybe, or a criminal like a hardcore criminal, you can imagine what can happen.
True.
They can end up learning bad manners from them. So like you find there are many challenges when it comes to juvenile justice in the country. Children are detained with adults. Then there's no diversion of children from the formal justice system. You find a child maybe has stolen maybe they've stolen 1,000 shillings and their parents are taking them to police and they end up finding themselves in remand homes, and yet we would actually caution them or even cancel them. There are other alternatives to taking the children to remand homes, and the deprivation of a child's right to personal liberty should come as a last resort. That's what the Convention on the Rights of the Child provides for. We should detain children as a last resort, and we're calling upon government of Uganda, calling upon police to ensure that they detain children as a last resort and not having children diverted from the formal justice system, because they really suffer a lot.
Okay, now I would want you to help me break down the last chapters in 2 minutes. I don't know if you can break them down for us, because we are running short of time.
Then the 8th chapter was on access to electricity. We looked at access to electricity and realized that not everyone has access to electricity in the country. And access to electricity is a backbone of socioeconomic development.
Yes.
If you want to achieve development in any country, we have to, of course, apply the human rights-based approach to development, but also electricity as a derived right. It's very important for us to have electricity so that we can be able to have development, so that we can be able to enjoy the right to education, the right to health. Like hospitals can't run without electricity. So electricity is very key. There's no international treaty that provides for access to electricity at the international level, but it's considered as a derived right. It's a derived right. So there are concerns when it comes to tariffs on electricity. Affordability of electricity in the country is still a challenge. Not everyone has access to electricity. That's one we know. Even in our villages, not all of us have access to electricity, and it is very key. It's the backbone of every other thing. Then chapter 9, we looked at emerging issues. We looked at disarmament. We looked at the human rights concerns when it comes to social media. We see there's a lot of social media. Everyone is using social media, but it also has negative implications. We've seen issues of cyberbullying. We've seen issues
a lot of things.
Yeah, so many things. Then also banishment. We also looked at banishment in Acholi region. People get banished from their homes because of various reasons. I'm rushing because of time. We also looked at terrorism. Remember, we had terrorism in the country, and it had resultant human rights concerns. Also, teenage pregnancy was one of the emerging issues. Then chapter 10 was on highlights of UHRC's interventions. Like I mentioned, UHRC does complaints, investigations, and legal services. UHRC does monitoring of we inspect places of detention, and we also do education and documentation and research. We registered 3,624 cases, complaints, but only registered 602, which were that fell within the admissibility criteria of the human rights violations that the Commission handles. Most of the complaints were against Uganda Police Force. That was 54% were against the police force, and 21% were against Uganda People's Defense Force. We investigated 1,387 complaints, mediated 54, referred 3022. I can't.
3002.
3022. 3022. Yes. Then also we need to note that we do not have tribunals that's specific here, because we didn't have quorum. Yeah, we never had quorum, so we didn't do any investigations.
Let me have chapter 11. What was chapter 11?
Chapter 11 was on UHRC. You know, we have a mandate of reviewing bills that are before Parliament to ensure that they comply with human rights standards. So we reviewed a number of bills. We reviewed the public health bill, amendment bill, and also the sentencing guidelines, and made recommendations under there. And chapter 12 was on treaty board reporting. Sorry for rushing. I'm really sorry. I think I speak very fast. Was on treaty board reporting. You know, government of Uganda ratified various treaties at the international level, regional level, and once you ratify those treaties, there are international obligations that government of Uganda has to make sure that they fulfill. One of them is on reporting. So the government of Uganda in 2021 submitted the report on the Convention on the Rights of the Child, because it ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child, submitted a report on the UPR. The Universal Periodic Review is a universal mechanism that is unique, where different countries come together and peer review themselves. We also submitted a report on CAT, on ICCPR, and also developed and adopted the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. We also made advocacy or recommendations on ratification of treaties, because there are various treaties that the government of Uganda has to ratify. Like I mentioned, the UN Convention on Forced Disappearances. We made a recommendation of government to ratify the OPCAT, that is the optional protocol on the Convention Against Torture. We made a a recommendation of ratifying the third optional protocol on the CRC, which provides for individual communications. In brief, that is what the 24th annual report was all about. I think I need to come back next time.
Definitely, because I was actually trying to suggest that Priscilla will definitely be back with us. And I can firmly confirm now I might have even found a co-host in the morning. Priscilla Nyarugoye, you're most welcome.
Thank you.
And thank you for being part of Smart Men's Business today. She's a Senior Human Rights Officer, Uganda Human Rights Commission. For the last 5 minutes, she was trying to break down these chapters for you to at least understand. But because of time, we shall have her next time to give us more of that and more about human rights. Good morning, and after the break, we are returning with SMB on ground with Andrew Barige, giving us an insight from the Uganda movie industry.